It's my pleasure to host the first of our dedicated Biometrics and Digital Identity Summit sessions, which we have developed in close collaboration with our key show partner, NEC. We at FTE have believed for a long time that biometrics technology would be at the heart of the end-to-end travel experience of the tomorrow, and the pandemic has certainly accelerated the speed at which this will happen, and we want to help the industry get there as fast as possible. The pandemic has also accelerated activity around digital credential technology with many applications in everyday society. This enables a more convenient contactless travel process from check-in to boarding and opens the door for biometrics being used more widely throughout the travel ecosystem, from one airline to the next, from one airport to another. Now, this summit will explore the ways in which we can bring all of these elements together successfully in order to scale the adoption of new digital identity and biometric approaches across the industry. We're going to get a joint presentation from senior figures at the TSA and US CBP. We're going to get a detailed update on the Star Alliance biometric rollout, and then a fascinating virtual contribution from Japan Airlines. Following that, there'll be a panel discussion this afternoon led by Dr. Joe Leader, the CEO of Apex, debating with key executives from Delta, MasterCard, Ports of Seattle, and the Linux Foundation Public Health on how we can overcome challenges to advance in this realm. It really is a great mix of content approaches, and all the speakers have a really deep understanding in this area, which I'm sure will provide invaluable insights and learnings to all of you out there, many of whom I know are planning your own biometric projects. So let's get this session underway. First, we're going to hear an exclusive joint presentation from two leading figures who are absolutely central to the biometrics revolution right now underway in our industry. First, we have Diane Sabatino, the Deputy Executive Assistant Commissioner at the Office of Field Operations for the US CBP, and Austin Gould, the Assistant Administrator for the Requirements and Capabilities Analysis at TSA. They are working closer than ever and will now share how their organizations will work and collaborate to further secure and enhance the travel experience with biometrics while protecting the privacy of travelers. Let's give Diane and Austin a warm welcome.
Daniel, thanks. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you for making TSA such a big part of this wonderful event. I'm glad just to get out of my basement most days, but to actually get to come here and see people and folks that I haven't seen in a while, it really is a true pleasure. In the interest of full disclosure, I made a discovery this trip, and the discovery is that at my ripe old age, I now need bifocals. So forgive me, I can't read my notes with my glasses on, now I can't see you, but I'll get through it. So just really fast, again, thanks to FTE for hosting us and giving Diane and I an opportunity to talk to you all today. And I'd like to thank my TSA team that's here. And in particular, I'd like to recognize Lucy Ryman-Snyder, who is completely responsible for what you saw, not only in the booth here, the quick pitches that a lot of you have taken advantage of. You know, I'm hard to deal with on a good day. Getting me from point A to point B on time is a challenge. You really got it done, Lucy, so thank you very much for that. So what you're going to hear from Diane and I today, I can tell you this. In my experience in federal government, this is not a particularly normal relationship. And what I mean by that is, I'm a 30-year Coast Guard guy, and what I've found in my years of service is in the tactical environment, when you're doing the mission, the relationship between different federal agencies can't be any better, because you have to. You got to rely on each other. You got to share information. You got to share tactics, techniques, and procedures. In the field, stuff like that works really well, okay? But as you get up toward headquarters, because the competing environment for budgets and personnel and everything else going on and the demands of the day-to-day, you tend to drift apart as agencies. But I hope this will make you feel good. It makes me feel good. Diane and I got to serve together down in Miami, and we've now brought that relationship to our positions at TSA and CBP headquarters. So there's not much that we do at TSA that could potentially touch CBP that I don't talk to her about and that she doesn't have full visibility of. And we solve problems together, we approach things jointly. And I think in the aviation ecosystem, that is just critical, because I can't be doing one thing and Diane doing something else. And as a federal government, quite frankly, we've got to get better at that. We're in the same department. We've got to share a lot of the same mission sets. We've got to, adjoining authorities. We as the federal government need to get better at that in the interagency. But I will tell you this, In my experience, where TSA is with CBP and what we're going to talk about today, we could not be in a better position. And I mean that. So I heard a little bit about red tape today, or earlier this week. In fact, it was some of my folks were talking, and they're saying, why are we getting things faster? Well, there's this red tape out there. Red tape, red tape, red tape. So I got it. That's probably aimed at me. Okay, it might be aimed at the chief information officer who just did a presentation there. But we are a bureaucracy like any other large agency, and the federal government can be hard to deal with. But I got to tell you, we're getting better. And I think this use case I'll explain to you is hopefully going to make you feel a little bit better about the direction we're going. Okay, so we're getting a lot of non-citizens arriving at the southwest border of the United States and trying to gain entry to the country. And CBP, God love you, Diane, you've got your hands full dealing with that down there. It's amazing what you and the Border Patrol are able to do. So I'm minding my own business. I happen to be back in Miami just visiting some people about a year ago, and Diane calls me and says, hey, you got to give me a hand. I said, what? She goes, well, we've got all these people down the southwest border, and we want to be able to biometrically identify them and associate that with whatever credentials they're carrying on an app, the CBP One app. And then if you guys could have access to that CBP One app, then you can use it at the airport, and we know exactly who you're encountering based on our initial encounter. And man, would that help, because the numbers are staggering. And right now at TSA, you're requiring us to give you not only the one form, paper form that you normally use, but we're requiring a second form now for whatever reason. I'm like, all right, Dan, I got this, no problem. So I called back to TSA headquarters, and I kind of asked, where are we with this? And the answer was, yeah, nah. We don't want to do that. I'm like, come on, you got to be kidding me. We're going to make them issue paper documents that have no security benefits whatsoever when they've got a biometric app that could do this seamlessly for us at the checkpoint. And the answer was, well, we'll look at it, but I don't think so. So, all right, so I gave it a couple of days, and Diane calls me again, you got to help me. And I called back up there, and TSA, I love the agency, we were ready to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. The answer I got back was, oh no, we got to have those two forms. Why? That's the way we always do it. I'm like, come on. So after a little bit of negotiations, within 30 days, Diane and I were in San Diego together to actually see this app in use at the checkpoint. So that's an instance where the bureaucratic red tape can be stifling at times, but she and I are committed to not put up with it. And that CBP One app is in use. It's been expanded, right, to include the non-citizens we're getting from Afghanistan, from that whole program. And there's other populations that we can use it for. So we're getting better, okay? We really are as a government, I think. So something's coming down the pike. And Jason Lim is here. He's already been on a panel. I think he's talking again this afternoon. But digital identity. And again, I want to talk to you about the red tape that we have to deal with, but how we're trying to get better and more adroit at how we're changing what we do at TSA with our partners at CBP. So Apple, titan of the IT industry, obviously, they've got this notion about how you can populate your credential on your smartphone and then use it to identify yourself when you encounter, federal government or, whatever. And Jason Lim decides to enter into a cooperative research and development agreement with them. We call it a CRADA. And the idea there is we talk to them about what our requirements are. They make investments in that. It's all very legal. It's kind of managed by DHS Science and Technology. And we can advance, ideas with that. But back to my friends at CBP. A lot of talk about biometric identification and how we can use it. And there's a lot of enthusiasm about it. And from my perspective, it might be what I'm most excited about and what I get to do at TSA. We're really breaking glass. CBP cannot be a better partner in this area. We've collaborated with them using their matching system, their TVS system, to do a prototype project in Detroit for a 1-to-N facial identification for pre-check passengers. And we love that. We think it's the way of the future. We're following a biometrics roadmap that was established maybe 3.5, 4 years ago. And that's one of the things is figure out biometrics for pre-check. Make it easier, make it seamless. Get out of the business of having transactional, issues with identification cards and boarding passes and all that. And boy, is it working. I'll give you a little caution, though, on biometrics, and I said this earlier in the IT session this morning for anybody that was there. Diane and I talk about this, and I talked to my other federal partners about it, and I talked to the industry about it. We're on the kind of the cutting edge of something with respect to biometrics. The technology really, really works, right? But you cannot overestimate the importance for accuracy, obviously, and also privacy considerations. And so we call it privacy by design. This has all got to be baked in. And from a TSA perspective, we need to make sure passengers know exactly what they're doing. And so that when they get photographed at the checkpoint, they need to know what we're doing with that, how it's going to match. The accuracy of the systems are phenomenal. The error rates that we see are not associated with any particular age or demographic. And I think we're in a really good spot there. We're going to go live in Atlanta with a similar system before too long. Delta Airlines has been a wonderful partner in this endeavor. We're working with them in Detroit as well. And I'm very excited about it, but we couldn't do it without our partnership with CBP. Ditto with one-to-one, credential matching. So the beauty of PreCheck, right, is we've got source photos, because when people enroll in PreCheck now, they've got to provide an image, and they provide it for the purpose of travel. We can access them. We access them through CBP, and we've got that database. But the vast majority of the traveling public that is not PreCheck, we don't necessarily have source photos for them. So we're investigating a one-to-one biometric matching capability, and it's a match. It's not identification. If you were at the innovation checkpoint the other day, and I hope you were, I hadn't seen that place in a while. I couldn't be any happier with what I saw there. To my friends from Las Vegas Airport, thanks. It's just spectacular. It really, really is. And I got a lot of great feedback on your officers as well, and how proud they are of that technology and enthusiastic about it. It's just so exciting over there. I love it, okay? But we've got an eGate solution there where you step up and you get photographed, and that photograph is matched to the credential that you provide, be it either your identification card or your passport, and you're matched right there at the checkpoint. Your secure flight status is returned, the gates open, and you proceed to the checkpoint. What I love about that is, I mentioned before about privacy concerns. I didn't say cybersecurity, but it's equally great. That transaction happens right there at that machine. No data is retained. The next time the passenger comes up and inserts their credential, it's a whole new transaction. There's no biographic or biometric data retained there. So from a cybersecurity perspective and from a privacy perspective, we're in really, really strong ground with that. Again, working with CBP. I wish COVID would go away, obviously. Don't we all, right? But I think that we fundamentally have changed how we screen passengers in response to the pandemic. If you go to an airport now, you see plexiglass. What you don't see is we've adjusted some of the algorithms on the machines to lower the false alarm rate so that we're doing fewer pat-downs. We don't like touching people. TSA officers hate doing pat-downs. Passengers hate doing pat-downs. There's technology out there that could probably largely get us out of the pat-down business. So Diane and I talk about seamless travel experience, reducing the amount of touch, getting people in and through and on their way, and making them happy. Because as I've learned in your industry, you want them spending money on the other side of the security gate, right? And a happy passenger tends to do that. I always thought that was kind of funny. The first time I heard somebody talk about the spend, I said, what are you talking about, the spend? But it makes sense to me. And there's technologies that I think will get us there. So just a couple of last things. I'll give you a commitment right now. Diane and I, different agencies, different backgrounds. We speak with one voice, though, about how we're going to approach this industry. And I think we're going to be able to operate fast and change a lot of things and break some glass in the not too distant future. In the IT session today, somebody asked, hey, what can we do to help you on your biometric journey? And what I said, and I'm going to say it again, is do me a favor, be a little bit patient, because these things take time. We're very diligent about privacy and cybersecurity. This stuff's going to come, it works, but getting it through the program to where it can actually be in an airport, it is challenging, but we're going to get there. And be careful. And what I mean by that is, we're one bad biometric spill away from just a lot of oversight questions. And I've got no problem answering them. I think we've got a great story to tell about our cybersecurity precautions and privacy by design and what we bake into the systems. But one really bad news story, it could set us back. I said this at the checkpoint the other day. There's a great New York Times piece that came out. I don't know if anybody in here was involved with that. But it is a solid article about where the federal government is going with biometrics. And I'm reading that, and I'm expecting the other shoe to drop, But these guys are out of control. And it never does. It's a great, great little piece. I encourage you to find it. And the last thing, and we're split the time, I promise. The last thing
we're good.
is One-stop security, okay? This is not my forte, but I want to talk about it here because it's important. You know, we work diligently with our international partners. We talk about, you know, the security baseline between countries. And if we have a reciprocal agreement with another country where they are screening passengers to a level of security at or greater than TSA, why do we have to screen them when they get here again? Okay, so we call it one stop. You've all probably heard of it. We're working hard on a pilot for this. It's going to involve London Heathrow Airport, Dallas, and Atlanta. And for the outbound passengers, we don't need any legislative change because the rules associated with getting screened in the destination country, you know, that's not our thing, right? But for the inbound passengers, you know, ATSA requires that every passenger on a US flight gets screened in the US. And so we need a legislative fix for that. But the House introduced a bill for one stop. We think the Senate's going to take it up. And then once we get the authority to do that, that should happen. And that will really make it a much more seamless travel experience for the international travelers, which is something Diana's super in tune with. So I'll stop talking. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and turn it over to my most valued colleague, Diane Sabatino from CBP. Thanks.
No, you were great on time, Austin. I always love someone running down the clock, too, because if you know this, I'm an introvert. Speaking to crowds is not my thing, though I do it quite a bit in the position that I'm in. But thank you so much. And really, other than being just a truly wonderful person, Austin really is such a great collaborator and really a visionary with us, you know, and how we are going to make this seamless travel, this touchless travel, curb to gate, that certainly my predecessor, John Wagner, and Colleen Manaher, and the wonderful team in CBP. I got to give a shout out certainly to our Office of Information Technology. We have Niall Samha right here in the room, you know, that is influencing, frankly, how Europe may potentially be rolling out their biometric entry-exit program. We were just over in Brussels talking with EU LISA and a number of other entities, excited about what we can bring to the table, and frankly, what we can learn from them as well as they're really kicking off their endeavors, you know, into their implementation. You know, first I want to say too, we have a new commissioner. Very excited about that. He just got confirmed the other day, and we'll be talking to him this coming Monday, but we have had a few engagements with him in advance of his confirmation to brief him up specifically on things like biometrics and why it's important to us. He is, you know, got a steep hill of information, really, to dig into and work to do. But certainly, travel resumption is right at the top of his priorities. And we're really excited to get in the room with him and bring in our partners in TSA. Certainly, Austin, I know, will have a lot to share with him about the collaborative efforts to talk about how we need to do this jointly. You know, we can't do it independently, but also, as federal agencies, we can't do it on our own either. We need the industry's support, certainly the airport authorities, the carriers, and the biometric industry. We're still hitting some roadblocks with, you know, the misinformation about the facial biometric technology. This is where we really need your help. I think the New York Times article was fantastic, and as I was reading it, it was the same. Waiting for that sentence that said but, and it didn't, and it was fantastic. It was really important. We have to continue to pursue those efforts to really educate the public on our business use case, because privacy really is a cornerstone in the work that we do with facial biometrics. We have to continue to reiterate that. You know, and again, we're not going to convince everyone. You know, what we do is not surveillance, right? And there may be some legitimate use for surveillance. It's just not what we do. You know, identifying somebody at a time and a place when they would normally expect to be, have their identity verified. So I don't know if that work will ever go away, but any opportunities we have, I think speaking engagements, joint opportunities that we have, certainly between you know, CBP and TSA, but also with the industry partners to really market what is important and how critical it is to the future of travel and really reimagining travel. One of the things that we've been working on in the last couple of weeks as well is how do we partner with TSA and the airlines, the airport authorities, to get better prepared travelers for what they're going to experience when they get to a port of entry or when they're going potentially through that TSA checkpoint. I recently traveled to Europe and had a layover in London going to, I mentioned, to Brussels. I received so much information about how to be prepared, for the health measures, right? And what forms to fill out. I really felt comfortable going to check in, I had to invest in reading the emails, certainly, that I did that. But what I noticed on the way back, and I haven't traveled internationally for some time, I'm sitting on the aircraft and one of the flight attendants handed me this antique. It was a customs declaration. I was like, what is that? What? Why? We don't need that anymore. Much to my chagrin, at the airport that I landed in, we don't have modified egress. I'll tell you, they're working on it now. Working on it now, we're gonna get there. But we have not done a great job of partnering with everyone to message what to expect when you get to that point. And how do we reach those target audiences to do that? Well, certainly it's forums like this, asking for your help and participation in messaging, how important it is to understand the privacy aspects of the facial biometric technology, but also what resources are available at the port. Is the mobile passport control application available? Do we have the global entry kiosks with the facial biometric in place? So a lot of great products, but if nobody knows about them, they're not meaningful if a traveler is unprepared when they show up for that identity verification. We really need to work on that, even for first-time travelers. But it is really nice to see with the accelerated deployment of simplified arrival that we did over the last year and a half, and a lot of great work, frankly, over the last several years, again, by the team that was in place to get it out there. Now we have to message it. But we're seeing the behaviors of some of those frequent travelers change already, which is very exciting. Okay, that they're prepared, they understand, they know exactly what to expect. But again, it's that first-time traveler crowd that we have to reach to. And with respect to global entry, we've rolled out the facial biometric to about 40 different locations with expansion in the kiosks throughout 2022. And we tested the e-gates in an airport location, and now we're testing the global entry totems with the facial recognition technology. The results have been incredible. We actually had to scale back the pilot, and I know some of you in the room may actually be participating in that pilot, scale back the pilot a little because it was so quick that it was overwhelming our officers' ability to identify the individuals that we needed to speak to. It's not a bad problem to have, that we have to scale it back a little bit. Clearly the proof of concept is there. And it's gonna take some operational adjustments, and we're gonna be looking at both of the e-gate and the totem projects to see where it's not a one-size-fits-all solution potentially either. It's really gonna be driven by the uniqueness of each terminal as to what technology is gonna work best. What can't happen is people can't get past us without being checked, but more to come on that. And certainly, how do we take the lessons learned from that? And again, in our joint partnership with TSA, I've been sharing, we have been doing a lot of work on the southwest border with simplified arrival, because it's not new in the air environment, right? We just gotta get people to understand it. But in the land border environment, kind of the final frontier for us is in the vehicle environment. But we're gonna get some lessons learned out of the vehicle environment. Frankly, they're gonna be very beneficial to the air travel environment and the maritime environment. Again, with the different technology that we're gonna be able to leverage, the in-motion, a lot of the work that's being invested down there really, again, do have, and testament to our folks, in the Office of Information Technology, really coming up with a solution for that's gonna benefit and be holistic across the field operations, all ports of entry enterprise. But one thing I do wanna share, and I'll get in trouble if I don't, certainly a lot of great technology that's being developed, right? As we're rolling out something new, there's something better coming out. And you all have been tremendous, in the outreach to us to make sure that we have the best visibility. Unfortunately, we've been doing it from a CBP perspective a little too piecemeal. So our Office of Information Technology did build out a vendor portal to submit the information called Business Connect, and it is available through the cbp.gov website. And that really is going to be a phenomenal resource for us, because with OIT and with our other partners, just in CBP, we're going to be looking at that together and holistically and really trying to better strategize how we identify what's going to work well for CBP. And it certainly doesn't limit the outreach that we're doing, but making sure that that information is pushed into that system is going to be very helpful for us because, again, we'll be able to look and nobody's relying on me to convey to anyone else the nuances of technology. It's like I'm giving the Fisher-Price version. Like I want to give the accurate depiction instead of pulling in from meetings. So a streamlined way to do that. But again, thanks to the team, certainly all the work that they've done, and thanks to Austin. I have a couple of great stories about Austin too, if anyone wants to hear them later. He is so much fun to work with, really, and never willing to back down. I wanted to say when you were talking about the CBP One app, can I share the quote with them that? Absolutely. Sometimes you just have to have a violent outbreak of common sense. I use it, but it's true. And again, in the federal government, just some examples from the work we've done in the southwest border, collaborating, as Austin mentioned, and with Afghanistan, working with some of our other federal partners, and deploying some of the facial biometric technology that we used overseas in the military bases for the Afghan evacuees. Some of these other agencies were like looking at us like we were using magic. I'm like, yeah, we can roll it out. And that really was just in a matter of days. Normally would have taken us months to years with training and implementation and privacy, but that's where the joint partnership is going to be critical too. We have to tackle the regulatory packages together. We have to tackle the governance together. But again, we need your help to do that as well. So thank you very much. Looking forward to some questions.
You're the best.
That was a great
quote. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Austin. It's wonderful to hear about you talking with one voice. That's obviously going to be for everyone to make the investments we know we need to see. That we really need to know that you guys see the world the same way, and it's fantastic to hear that you do. So I'd love to get some questions from the floor. My colleague at the back there has a microphone. Do we have anyone immediately wanting to follow up? It's a great opportunity to talk to the TSA and the CBP here right now.
We've testified before Congress. We're good with awkward silence, too.
Absolutely.
I'll jump right in then. So, I mean, what are you seeing and learning from other countries and governments around the world in terms of how they're looking to scale out biometrics? I mean, I guess you're lobbying for a consistent approach. I mean, I think that's something we keep hearing. So can you tell us about some of your dealings with other countries and governments about this?
I can certainly take that. And we're actually planning some joint international trips in the upcoming calendar year. Pushed back a little, unfortunately, because of some travel restrictions. But really the solutions, and again, seeing some of the lessons learned, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And it's not necessarily in every environment going to be a complete end-to-end one package. Our ports aren't cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Right, and we're seeing that certainly in the land border environments over in Europe. Talking with EU LISA about some of the challenges that they're having. They're certainly learning from our efforts, but getting the right technology for the environment and dealing with things, especially outdoors, like with environmental factors. Yeah. But that and I don't want to be harsh. I mean, especially with the EU negotiating with a number of different countries versus. Yeah. I think we have the luxury, here, and with great partnerships, it's not the challenges that they have.
But do you get the sense they see the world the same way that you do in terms of biometrics and rolling this out? You're confident that we're not going to get totally different approaches around the world that's going to really slow this down?
So I don't think you're going to see that, and where we're really starting to crack the code in the international environment is sharing like threat priority lists. Right. And sharing detection algorithms and prohibited items detection stuff. And it's all standard-based. It's all open architecture. Our team is diligent in taking a very standard-based approach to biometric identification that we can export elsewhere. And if we're operating off the same standards, the edge device doesn't matter as much. Yeah. So.
Fair enough. Okay, do we have anyone want to? Okay, Joe at the front's got a microphone.
I wanted to ask a quick question that is interesting during the times of COVID, which is unruly passengers. So last week at Apex Expo, we had every airline CEO and the alliance groups vote in favor of an unruly passenger data sharing process. I know that there's been a reticence by the TSA and CBP to utilize the no-fly list for situations like that. Do you see biometrics helping, we have a problem now when people are banned by a single airline, they can attempt to go through on one boarding pass for another airline and then a false boarding pass for the airline they're banned from. Do you see biometrics as a solution set for all of these new kinds of problems that we're having?
So I'll take a first swing at that, and in the interest of full disclosure, this is not my area of expertise. But I will tell you, the unruly passengers are a problem. We are somewhat limited by our statutory authority about what we can do with information on passengers. Going straight to a no-fly list, I think, has been discussed a little bit. Probably not an option. Is there some middle ground there that we need to consider where we can track these passengers? Because let's be honest, it's a safety issue in the air. It's a safety issue in the checkpoint, right? I mean, we really, I think, need to do a better job at understanding who is flying and who could potentially be a problem. As we get there, biometrics could certainly be a part of that.
And from a CBP perspective, I think the same with respect to privacy and the data and the information. However, as we see, the airlines, and grateful for the investments they're making and building into their own modernization efforts, right? The true curb to gate. We will get there with the biometric solution and identification. Right? We have to work through kind of the domestic piece, who we don't have the ability to pull information to build galleries from passports or visas. Certainly the pre-check program, I think we have to look at other amenable populations to start building that out. I mean, from a CBP perspective, with unruly passengers, we get to consequence delivery really quick. Unfortunately, many of our partners in the industry can't get to that, but that boarding pass swapping, I mean, I mentioned earlier, we have been seeing that since I started in the 90s. We've gotten a lot better, certainly at identifying that, and certainly with TSA's significant investment at that identity verification, but that still exists as a challenge. And the biometric identification, the regulatory agency that validates is what's going to be critical to that final piece.
Okay, we're going to need to wrap this one, but my feeling is the biometrics and digital identity revolution is here. It's just there, right? We know the tech works. We all see the benefits, but I'm a bit nervous that there's just these little obstacles that are going to just slow us down, and we're not going to quite get there. Can you guys beat the drum here and just give everyone the confidence that we can push through this? And what are the things we need to do to really drive this revolution through to its potential as soon as possible?
Let me take that? I think the messaging. The messaging, the joint messaging campaign. I think recently the administration was hosting some listening sessions on facial, and again, some of the strong advocates for privacy still do not grasp, or frankly are unwilling to really embrace the business use case. That's what's important to us, and why the partnership and the public forums. I think again leveraging the media to talk about the distinctions and outlining our authorities clearly.
I will tell you, from my perspective, if you want the drum, I'm the drum beater. Yeah. Okay, she's the detail person. Yeah. I'm the drum beater. We're going to get there. We have to get there. Okay. Biometrics represents a significant enhancement in security effectiveness. That's number one, and we're a security agency. Okay. And then number two, does it help us with passenger convenience? People that are into this stuff, they like it. That's two. And then number three, don't forget, we're going to get back to our legacy travel volumes before too long, and we got a throughput problem in our checkpoints. They're only so big, and as passenger volumes continue to climb, getting people through more quickly without sacrificing security effectiveness, and in fact enhancing it, is key. We're going to get there. But we're very careful and very deliberate, because one misstep, I'll say it again, from a cyber perspective or from a privacy perspective, it'll set us back years. But I think we've got the solutions. I think it's all being worked. I think I was almost going to say wearing down. I think we're building acceptance in the government.
Wearing them down is good too.
Wearing down, all right, that's what speak for it. We're wearing them down.
Good.
And I think we're going to get there.
Good.
I would tell you if I thought otherwise.
No, brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us both today. It was a great story. And let's see, I know you're going to help us drive this through. So let's give them a big round of applause, Say that, guys. Okay, we're going to move on now to our next segment, which is going to share the story of how Star Alliance and NEC's biometric database identification platform rollout has improved the travel experience for frequent flyers at airports around the world, and the big lessons that they've learned from this along the way. So I'd like to now invite to join me up on stage Christian Jager, the VP of Customer Experience at Star Alliance, Bill Carlton, the Director of Program Management for NEC, Sherry Stein, the Head of Technology Strategy Americas at CETA, and Patrick Sigler, the Product Manager for Regulatory Services at Biometrics at Lufthansa. Let's give them a warm welcome. Bill's going to go straight up. Give us a bit of an overview of what's been going on.
Okay. So good morning, and thank you very much for that introduction. And to our government partners at CBP and TSA, you talk about the red tape, but it's really refreshing to see how you can innovate and kind of cut through that red tape. One of the best ways to kind of describe this digital identity and technology as an enabler of capability for enhancing experience, and what Dr. Becker from Lufthansa called this morning during his session, delighting the customer, is really to kind of show you a video of how technology has been enabled and implemented operationally in an airport in Frankfurt.
Airport innovations make traveling a breeze. A digital ID clears passengers' path through airports, enabling safe, touchless recognition from curb to gate, even when wearing a mask. Future-ready airports transform travel with Star Alliance Biometrics, powered by NEC iDelight.
Customers are now expecting less contact in the customer experience, and biometrics fits in very nicely.
Once the passenger's digital ID is validated on Star Alliance Biometrics app, travelers opt in for shorter lines, faster identification, and touchless service from reservation to destination. Passengers with digital ID can seamlessly check baggage, enter security, locate gate, purchase duty-free goods, visit the lounge, and board the plane. A traveler's digital ID elapses when his trip is complete. It can be used for other consented transactions, such as rental cars and hospitality, and he can reactivate it at any time. The future of travel is now.
So hopefully that gives you kind of a little overview of how digital ID is actually being used today. So that was deployed in Frankfurt and Munich, Germany last year, November. So in the midst of a global pandemic, and it really took collaborative efforts, not just from our team, but our partners at Lufthansa and Star Alliance to enable this capability to reality. There's over 28,000 members enrolled today, even with travel kind of reduced. And also with our partnership with CETA, we've got aggressive growth plans to kind of extend this capability and take this digital experience and delight more and more people throughout the travel ecosystem. There have been some interesting studies, and IATA just released, I believe last week, some metrics that kind of corroborate the use of biometrics as an enabling technology. And over 70% of passengers are willing to share their biometrics to improve their airport processes in that experience. And really that kind of goes across from what Austin and Diane were talking about with CBP and TSA, and also into the airport zone and also beyond it. How can that be used? And that percentage increase has only grown over the past 2 years, most of which has been during a pandemic situation. So use of contactless biometrics technologies to enable an enhanced experience and help you through your airport journeys. Over 88% of passengers will also be willing to share immigration information. One of the pain points traveling internationally is after a long haul flight, now you've got to wait in line to get through customs and immigration, not just coming into the US, but going overseas as well. So through the use of biometrics, the willingness and consent of passengers to be able to share this information, those pain points can be reduced over time. And 36% of passengers have experienced the use of biometric data while traveling. And of these, an overwhelming majority have been extremely satisfied with that experience. And really, it's a collaborative effort across industry, across our airline and common use partners across Star Alliance Biometrics that have enabled this to become an operational reality, and it's in use in the world today.
Thank you, Bill. So what we're going to try and do today is talk about how this came to be, where you're at now, and obviously where you're trying to take it. So obviously, there's been a lot of trials of biometrics, but obviously this is the big, this is the big production, this is the big rollout, so I'm sure you've got some great learnings to share, which I really appreciate you guys coming to talk about this. So, Christian, I mean, from a Star Alliance perspective, tell us about how you designed this. Like, how did you even get the bid together? Tell us about that sort of early process of how it came to be and how you even started to conceptualize it.
Well, I think initially it took a process where we wanted to understand whether Star Alliance as an organization would be the right organization to actually launch this, or whether we would want to do this on an airline basis. And we just came to the conclusion that Star Alliance, representing over 700 million customers before the pandemic, was bringing sufficient volume to the topic of biometrics. And that's why we went for the Star Alliance solution. We had some other aspects in mind. We wanted to bring biometrics to all touch points. So I think we heard today a lot about the regulatory touch points, but a customer equally expects to have the same biometric experience when they go to a lounge or when they go through the departure gate. Yeah. That was our ambition. And we also wanted to bring an ease of transaction where a customer doesn't need to worry or doesn't need to enroll every time that they want to have the biometric experience. So we wanted a solution where a customer signs up into a program and then goes through the sign-in process once, and afterwards, all future travel, he will be able to have the experience without additional enrollments. That is where our slogan is coming from, enroll once, use multiple times. So that was our basis from which we started.
And what about the airline members? Were you consulting and engaging with them extensively in terms of coming up with the concept?
Well, I think when we started it, obviously we went through a tender process because for us it was also a new area. And we did a comprehensive tender. Eventually we selected NEC, which is a great partner. And our 26 member airlines were very closely involved. And we obviously have their support. And this is something that we do at a community level in the alliance. So really everybody's backing this approach.
Yeah. And how did the pandemic change the rollout and the strategy?
Well, it's interesting because obviously the business is not producing any volumes at all. So you could argue that looking at all the measures that were taken to mitigate the damages from the pandemic, that stopping a biometric project would be one of them, but it actually didn't happen because there was an acknowledgement both from the airline leadership as well as from the airports that we need to continue with this. So we were able to actually get funding for it, one of the very few areas, and we were able to launch it at the end of last year in the midst of the pandemic. Now, obviously, the numbers are very small. We talked about 30,000 enrollments that we have today. That is a drop, but nonetheless, it shows that this is, I think, very much future-oriented.
Yeah. And what about things like masks and a bigger push on the touchless aspect? Did that change the dynamics?
Well, when we worked very closely with NEC, we always were of the understanding that the algorithms used to do the matching would produce satisfactory results. And then sometime in 2020, we were like, okay, wait, what do we do with the people wearing masks? And one of the options would have been for people to pull it down. But we said very much from the beginning to NEC, no, that's not an option. Yeah. We're destroying the experience if we do that. Yeah. And then I think you went to work and you created an algorithm that still produces a very high matching percentage while still wearing a mask. Yeah. So I think that's a great testament to how far the technology has evolved.
So Bill had some sleepless nights suddenly adapting the mask.
Yeah, just a little bit, but it's addressing the algorithmic side of it to recognize a person wearing a mask where most of their face is obstructed is something that NEC had been working on for a while. But it became a very hard requirement from Lufthansa, the operators in the airport, and also through Star Alliance, that in order to deploy this capability operationally, to go into production state, we had to be able to recognize individuals with masks.
Yeah.
And our teams were able to effectively, within the last 2 months of the deployment process, insert this new algorithm from our core technology group, get through the testing cycles, and deploy it operationally in the airport. And it's worked extremely effectively.
Yeah. And so let's talk a bit about the impact on the organizations. Patrick, from your perspective, why was this an essential investment and need from Lufthansa?
So from the Lufthansa side, Daniel, not a secret, we were really one of the first airline groups to be involved with biometrics early on, starting 2017 with our partners here in the United States, actually with CBP at Los Angeles Airport. And right around that same time, we commissioned an in-house study, exactly these points that Christian was saying. Unfortunately, we're not a U.S. airline. I remind this to my U.S. colleagues all the time, and we can only utilize the great TVS system on our routes in and out of the United States. So we said, exactly to Christian's point, we want to have an in-house or a Star Alliance solution, so our passengers expect this this technology seamless, whether they're flying to New York or whether they're flying to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is a extreme overall acceptance from our passengers and expectation of biometrics. And it's something that as passengers continue to return to travel post-pandemic, we want to make this the new norm for them, this touchless, seamless process.
Yeah, understood. Perfect. And Christian, could you tell us, has the project lived up to expectations from your side? I'm guessing it has, but could you tell us what Star Alliance is hearing from its members also about the deployment of the technology across the network?
Well, so far we're happy with the approach that we're taking. I think we're happy with the technology because it is proving itself. We have just recently added another airport and another airline into the program. So Vienna Airport was added and Austrian Airlines was added. So we're quite happy where it is going in terms of proof of reliance, if I may call it that way, on the technology side. I think in terms of volumes, we're very far away from where we want to be. Sure. I've heard on numerous occasions, also here at the conference, that everybody is trying to push the end-to-end biometric experience. Yeah. But I think we have an infrastructure concern on that side, because if we look at the ability of touch points to be equipped and to facilitate biometrics, it is currently very limited if you look at it from an end-to-end perspective. Yeah. And I think that is one of our focus areas going forward. We want to continue to convince airports, convince other stakeholders to invest into the upgrading of the touch points, to invest into the enablement of touch points, also a convergence between regulatory touch points and, I would say, commercial or airline touch points, so that we really can deliver also on the end-to-end experience.
Yeah, understood. So let's talk about the learnings, because you guys have really been in the thick of it. So what are the learnings and what are the issues that still need to be worked out? So maybe each of you could give some details on what you feel has been learned along the way, what worked better than expected, what were the problems and how did you overcome those, and where are you still trying to drive improvements? Maybe, Bill, could you kick us off with that?
Sure, absolutely. So I think one of the key learnings we took out of this collaborative relationship was in the midst of a pandemic, we could implement this type of changing technology and enablement completely remotely. And it took collaboration, many Teams calls, sleepless nights, working around the world, but we made it happen. And it's thanks to the collaboration, the hardworking folks at Lufthansa and Star Alliance. And the other learning is, that I think, Austin talked about it, is the, tactics, techniques, and procedures. I think Lufthansa's got a lot of experience, in the airport, a small scale, unfortunately, thanks to pandemic, the rollout plans initially forecasted were reduced, but it's given them the opportunity to kind of take this on a small scale, fine-tune their techniques and procedures, and make it an effective experience, not just for their passengers, but for the gate agents and the operators as well.
Sherry, can you tell us the CT view on learnings along the way here?
Yeah, I think the same. Again, there's an initial learning curve, right, for the staff on how to use the system, for the traveler, right, because they're so used to having to pull out their passport, their boarding pass.
Yeah.
And so once it becomes very easy as a follow the leader, once they see the first passenger do it or the agent experiences the system for the first time, they get very excited about it because it makes everything so easy. And I don't, we started in the early days with biometrics. You think, we're all 5 years nearly into this now.
Yeah.
There was always the fear of the threat of people losing their jobs and
Yeah.
staff reductions. But actually now they see how much easier it makes their jobs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of really having to change the technology, except perhaps for mask detection, but it was more about changing the messaging.
Okay.
Because we've remained consistent about the seamless travel journey, but now it's about touchless and how to make that safe for the passenger as well as for the staff.
Yeah.
And I think they've all really embraced that.
That's interesting, because I think we always talk about educating passengers, but obviously educating internally, the stakeholders internally to take people there is important. That's a good point. And Patrick, what about you?
Just to echo off Sherry's point right there, we launched soon after Los Angeles MCO Airport with CETA, and I like this example. Our teams there are my local airport teams. They were very skeptical at the beginning. They were very skeptical, but I came back a few months later. Once we started the rollout, the system was working great with CETA as our partner, and they could not live without it. They said, Patrick, we've had some outages. We've had to switch gates without biometric devices, and it was a learning. And actually, we've now taken that synergy. We have a competence center and expertise with our U.S. teams to help educate our teams now in Germany, who are experts with self-services and gates, but not the biometric gates.
Yeah.
So do like that point from Sherry there. Another learning, though, from our side, from the airline side, and this is also kind of piggybacks what Christian said, scaling it up, but also customer awareness. So marketing and getting those passengers to enroll in the program, but then making sure those enrollments turn into usages.
Yeah.
And we have our top status customers who are also enrolled in Star Biometric Hub pretty heavily. However, to get them to use it and to get out of their normal routine through the first class terminal in Frankfurt or through their favorite check-in agent at the business class check-in, to direct them to those biometrics that they're willing to enroll in and want to use, that's still a learning for us that we're working on.
And what tactics will you use to drive that percentage higher?
It's going to be more individualized marketing and communication through our sales teams, through these passengers who we constantly, of course, have a dialogue with, our top status customers. But as Christian mentioned before, we have around 30,000 enrollees, which has changed from 20,000 when I did the interview with FTE about a month ago with Marta. It just shows you the testament that passengers expect this. This is the new normal. It's seamless. It's touchless. And as they return to travel, they want to use it.
Yeah. Christian, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I think a lot was already said, but maybe I can add the aspect of data privacy. When we started all of this, I think it was at a time when GDPR regulations were introduced in Europe, and everybody was quite afraid of the impact that would have. And we made quite a good experience with that. We were able to work through all of the different issues. We're fully GDPR compliant. Data privacy is at the heart of it. Customers are very closely involved. They can give their consent. They can give their consent on an airline basis. They can give their consent on a regional basis. We have worked out the contractual relationships of the stakeholders involved in the delivery, whether it's airports, airlines, ourselves, the technology provider. So I really feel that we're on a very solid footing or very solid foundation in terms of also data privacy compliance.
Very good. So let's talk about scaling it. Now, are we at a point now where every airline and airport should be investing in this now? I mean, I know you guys believe in it, but what about, and we know we've seen a lot of activity from the hub airports and the network carriers, but are we going to see this push out now into regional airports? And will we see the low-cost airlines using it? I know AirAsia's gone in, which is a really encouraging sign. And I know you've been doing some interesting work, Patrick, with sort of single biometric cameras, which help reduce costs. So let's hear your views. Is this something we're just going to see everywhere at airports and airlines, soon? And is there a way, like you've done, to bring the cost down, right? Because this the business case, and any cost right now is not exactly easy to justify. So let me hear your views on this. Are we ready for biometrics everywhere soon?
I'll start. Absolutely. I think we've been pretty open about this. When we started the rollouts, these were in the major hubs, the Los Angeleses, Orlando's, but also airports that had money to spend on infrastructure, on e-gates. And we understand there's smaller, medium-sized airports out there that can't afford that, or they don't have a lot of international traffic outside of the U.S. Of course, talking about the U.S. example. So we're absolutely willing to work with them, work with additional providers to get to a one-step solution. Of course, I mentioned this in my talk yesterday. We do not believe in any sort of two steps. There's no benefits for airlines or passengers there. But we're absolutely willing to work with them to look at web services and new types of technologies to connect to our DCS.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something. Again, we prefer working with our CUTE providers, our common use platform, because we've seen that's where passengers, our agents, our teams at the airport get the most functionality. But we're willing to talk with everyone.
Yeah.
I'll do another shout out. I just had a chat with Austin Airport about a project. So again,
good.
Absolutely, we're open for that.
And Bill, you must be talking to a lot of airlines and airports around the world. I mean, is there a business case that makes sense more broadly, or is it really individual every time? And have you got some recommended sort of paths by which airlines and airports can explore biometric rollouts effectively?
Sure, yeah, and as a technology provider, of course, we want everyone to adopt it, for ourselves and our competitors. It's just, the adoption and the growth and the expansion makes it better for everybody. As a traveler myself, I like to take advantage of the experiences that we help create and enhance. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. Every locale, every airport, small, mid, large size, are they government or city-owned, are they private partnership? The solution, the technology has to be able to seamlessly integrate to what their use cases are, their business workflows, their financial models, and kind of how the layout of their airports facilitate the addition of very small footprint cameras that now, to the back-end integration, to the departure control systems, biometric identity. Now Lufthansa's back-end now knows that who it is, they're cleared to board this flight, and they're on their way.
Yeah. I mean, Christian, does inevitably there just need to be a big leap of faith here, that there will be a return down the road?
Yeah, and I would love to say that this is starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is that we're still facing ramifications of the pandemic, some insecurities, and we anticipate that if things go well, that maybe as we head into next year, second half of next year, hopefully there will be more courage and more possibilities for scaling this up. And I also feel we always come back to the business case. There definitely is a business case. I think Lufthansa gave the example very initially when they boarded, I think, an A380 in 20 minutes in Los Angeles. The business case is there, but the problem is it requires scale. The business case doesn't come if you only have partial equipment of touch points, or if you only have 10% of a flight enabled with the biometric experience. Yes. So we need to get the leap of faith on getting through this initial phase, and once we hit the right level of volumes, equipped touch points and so on, enrolled customers, then the business case will start kicking in.
And might the alliances be willing to help share some of the costs of this stuff, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, the alliances are financed by our members, so at the end of the day, but also with our partners. I think we really need to look at the whole bandwidth of stakeholders that are involved in this. And I'm always mentioning airports, I'm mentioning the airlines, the technology providers. And I think we all need to come together and see how can we support each other also from an investment perspective.
Orchestrating a brighter world. NEC.